Minecraft updates can be surprisingly unpredictable. New features often come out of nowhere and can feel almost arbitrary at first, but in reality, they're usually not as random as they might seem. A good example of this is the domestication of the ghast in the form of the happy ghast. It might have felt like a strange addition, but it arrived shortly after the Minecraft movie, where ghasts were shown behaving in a very similar way, or the recent overhaul of baby mob models that might have seemed even more out of the blue until you noticed that the baby nautilus and ghast already had unique models compared to other baby mobs, which likely pushed Mojang to update them all. And more broadly, it's not that difficult to start predicting future updates either. For example, it's almost a certainty that some form of an end update is currently in the works. What that ends up looking like, or when it happens, is anyone's best guess, but over the years, Mojang and its developers have hinted at plenty of features they'd eventually like to add to the game. Unfortunately, a lot of those ideas have yet to be featured. So in this video, I'm going to go through some of these hinted features, however vague they may be, and explore how they could realistically be implemented into the game. One of the more recent examples of this came in 2025, when a Minecraft developer hinted that they'd like to work on a potential update for minecarts, and possibly even the end. While an end update could easily be a video of its own, let's focus on minecarts for now. It's safe to say that minecarts have a huge amount of unrealized potential. For something that's meant to be a core form of transportation, they've barely received any meaningful attention over the years and have slowly been overshadowed by faster, more convenient alternatives. So let's take a step back and rework the minecart in a more comprehensive way. And what better place to start than its appearance, which for the most part has remained unchanged for nearly its entire lifespan. First, give it a proper foundation. A set of 4 visible wheels that sit cleanly on the rails and actually spin as the minecart moves. On top of that, add a solid chassis that everything else can be built around. From there, add the sides of the minecart. Finally, add a connector hook which will allow the minecart to be modified later on. With that, you end up with a brand new minecart model that mostly keeps its original texture and overall feel of the vanilla minecart, while adding just enough detail to match modern Minecraft's visual style. Yet appearance is the least of the minecart's problems. Despite requiring extensive setup, minecarts are painfully slow. Unless they offer something no other form of transportation does, they will continue to feel largely obsolete. At the moment, they're barely faster than sprint jumping, which ironically makes them one of the worst transport options in the game. Given that Minecraft's terminal velocity sits at 78.4 blocks per second, a reasonable baseline would be to place minecart speed somewhere between sprint jumping and that upper limit, around 40 blocks per second. To give players proper control, entering a minecart will replace the XP bar with an acceleration meter. This allows you to set a target speed and maintain it automatically, without constant input. Chaining minecarts together has long been one of the community's most requested features, and this update finally enables it. Each minecart now includes a coupler design specifically for linking carts together. By simply placing 2 minecarts next to one another, multiple minecarts can be connected, and shears can be used to break the link. This immediately gives minecarts the clear purpose of transporting large quantities of items, and doing so quickly. The railing also needs a touch-up. Currently, minecarts lose all momentum the second they leave the tracks, which is quite unsatisfying. Instead, they should retain their momentum, allowing them to jump small gaps and transition between tracks. Another major issue is cost and setup. Building long rail networks is both tedious and expensive, largely due to the reliance on powered rails. To address this, a furnace minecart can now be coupled to a standard minecart, providing sustained acceleration up to 60 blocks per second. The furnace minecart also gains a proper UI, making fuel management better. Acceleration still takes time, but power rails can be used to instantly reach maximum speed when needed. To automate speed control without player input, a new copper rail is introduced. The copper rail converts incoming redstone signals directly into minecart speed, with a signal strength of 15 producing the maximum speed of 60 blocks per second, decreasing by 4 blocks for each lower signal level. Minecarts can also be used to ram into mobs, which will knock them off the track, at the cost of reduced momentum. To complete the expanded rail system, a cross-section rail is added, allowing for smoother intersections. As a final touch, a dispenser minecart completes the lineup, activating automatically when passing over an activator rail. With that, the minecart system is finally complete and actually worth using. I love the minecart, and it's a tragedy to see them in the state they currently are, and an update like this could revolutionize transport in Minecraft. And speaking of Minecraft evolving into something much bigger than it originally was, this video is sponsored by Wynncraft, which is about to release its massive Fruma expansion after nearly 7 years of development. Wynncraft is a full MMORPG RPG built entirely inside Minecraft, with over 4.8 million players exploring a huge hand-built world filled with story-driven quests, unique abilities, and a completely custom class system featuring 5 classes and 15 archetypes. Rather than feeling like a collection of minigames, it's designed much more like a traditional RPG, with minimal grinding and a world built around long-running lore and progression. I've spent some time playing Wynncraft myself, and what stands out most is just how far it pushes Minecraft as a platform. The scale, polish, and the amount of custom systems make it feel surprisingly close to standalone RPG rather than a typical server experience. The new Fruma expansion continues the main storyline with fully voice-style dialogue presentation, character portraits, 5 entirely new regions, new mobs, music, and ultimate abilities for every class, while raising the level cap from 105 to 120. You can play Wynncraft for free right now on Minecraft Java Edition at nekoma.wynncraft.com. And if you decide to check out anything on their store, you can use creator code Nekoma during checkout to get 5% off and directly support the channel. Now let's continue with features that were announced in 2024, starting with the rework of the Dragon Egg. The Dragon Egg has gone almost its entire lifespan without any meaningful visual updates, and while it's technically a unique block, its current appearance doesn't really reflect what it represents. As the ultimate endgame trophy, it comes across as slightly odd and underwhelming. A visual rework could easily fix that. One obvious source of inspiration is the existing Sniffer Egg. Bringing the Dragon Egg closer in line with its design would help create consistency while still allowing it to stand out. Giving it subtle pulsating lights would better convey its importance and naturally fit within Minecraft's modern aesthetic. Of course, the Dragon Egg is primarily a trophy, and it should remain one, especially given that there's only one obtainable per world. Still, that doesn't mean we can't experiment with it. Following the recent trend of updating baby mob models, it's hard not to imagine how fitting it would be to hatch a baby ender dragon from the egg. Raising it over time and eventually using it as a flying mount would be incredibly cute. That said, something like a rideable baby dragon is admittedly unlikely to ever make it into the game. Continuing with some announcements from 2023, starting with a small but very welcome change involving potions. Minecraft has already moved toward giving items with similar functions distinct textures even when they only differ by color, things like dyes or spawn eggs, largely to make the game more accessible for players with color blindness. Potions, however, are arguably even a bigger issue. Keeping track of them is already difficult, and that problem only gets worse if you're colorblind. In the past, King B Dogs has mentioned on Twitter that potions are something Mojang plans to revisit eventually, so it's safe to say that this is less a question of if and more a question of when. Unique potion textures would be a genuinely great quality of life improvement and a very welcome change overall. Another feature that surfaced in 2023 is tied to the desert. A Minecraft developer once posted an image on Twitter showing a table made out of camels, and while the image itself seemed harmless, players quickly noticed something unusual in the background: sand layers. That small detail immediately sparked speculation. The developer later clarified that it was an accident, but it is still an interesting idea to explore. We already have snow layers which can spawn naturally or build up over time during snowfall. Applying a similar system to deserts would allow sand layers to create smoother transitions between elevations, rather than the sharp steps we see now. These sand layers would also accumulate during sandstorms. Sandstorms would occur in desert biomes during thunderstorms. Unlike snow, which covers surfaces evenly, sand would naturally collect around slopes and inclines. During a storm, visibility would be heavily reduced and player movement would be affected. Moving against the wind would slow you down, while moving with it would give you a slight speed boost. While sand layers themselves might look a little strange at first, sandstorms as a mechanic feel like a very natural fit for the desert, and could add a lot of atmosphere to the biome. Following sand layers, the next feature that was discussed involves cakes. Back in 2022, a developer shared a concept for stacked cakes. While the idea itself is appealing, the way it was originally presented probably isn't the cleanest way to implement it. Before stacking cakes at all, it would make more sense to first expand the variety of cakes available in the game. Using different ingredients, players could bake alternative cake variants: cookies, sweet berries, cocoa for chocolate cake, honey for pancakes, beetroot, or even glowberries. With a proper selection of cake types in place, cakes could then be stacked up to 3 layers high in any combination by simply right-clicking one cake onto another. You could still place a candle on top, and when eaten, the cake would be consumed from the top layer down. Overall, a stacking system like this would be a genuinely welcome quality of life change that adds a ton of variety. Check out Sans Cakes for these awesome cake designs. The next feature is actually the first mob on the list, which might come as a surprise since it's an interesting one: the Sloth. Back in 2022, during a livestream, game director Agnes mentioned that she'd like to see sloths added to Minecraft. While nothing was confirmed, it's definitely a mob that could realistically make its way into the game at some point. Sloths would spawn in jungles and are fittingly incredibly slow. In fact, they're the slowest mammals in the world. They spend most of their lives in trees and only occasionally come down to the ground, where they are largely defenseless. With their long claws and extra neck vertebrae, sloths can turn their heads nearly all the way around, and because of their slow movement, algae naturally grows on their fur. In-game, you'd see sloths climbing trees, moving across them, and feeding on leaves, sticks, and fruit, allowing them to stay almost completely in trees. Even on atmosphere alone, they'd already be a great fit, but they could offer more than just being cute. If you feed the sloth one of its favorite snacks, like apples, you could tame it. Once tamed, right-clicking the sloth would cause it to cling to your back. While riding on you, it would grant access to a small 9-slot inventory. Its dense fur, already home to moss and parasites, essentially acts as a natural pouch for storing items. And that's not all. While the sloth is on your back, harvesting crops would trigger the sloth to automatically replant whatever item you're holding, consuming one crop as a cost. Since automatic replanting has been a long requested feature, this would be a very Minecraft-style way of implementing it without overcomplicating it. Over time, the sloth's fur would gradually turn greener. At that point, you could shear it to groom its coat, occasionally obtaining moss or other small items caught in its fur. Overall, sloths alone would add a huge amount of atmosphere to jungles, but even with just a fraction of these mechanics, they could become a genuinely useful companion that would fit right into the game. And the sloth isn't the only mob that has been hinted at. Next up is the snail. Back in 2022, Minecraft developers shared how they'd imagined snails working in the game, so let's build upon that idea. Snails would spawn in humid biomes during rainy nights and retreat into their shells during the day. They move extremely slow, making them the second slowest mob featured in this video. As they move, snails leave behind a temporary slime trail that slowly fades away. They'd also be the only mob capable of climbing vertical surfaces besides spiders. However, they're still affected by gravity. Break the block they're attached to and they will fall. Snails naturally gravitate toward nearby water sources, which even opens the door for things like simple snail races. You can interact with their slime trails by right-clicking them with a glass bottle to collect slime in the bottle. Combining 3 of these lets you craft a slime carpet, which can be placed on floors, walls, or even ceilings. Standing on it allows players to cling to the surface, letting them climb walls or even ceilings. Alternatively, the slime can be brewed into a potion of sticking, granting the same wall climbing and ceiling walking abilities without needing slime carpets. It's a small mob, but one that introduces some genuinely interesting movement mechanics. Now let's move on to 2021, starting with ice caves. While caves have received a massive overhaul in recent years, introducing a wide variety of underground biomes, one thing they still lack is strong ties to the surface biome above them. Whether you're mining beneath a cold or hot biome, caves largely generate the same way. Adding biome-dependent cave variants would go a long way toward addressing that. An ice cave, for example, could generate exclusively beneath cold biomes. These caves would be coated in ice that become denser the deeper you go, with hanging icicles acting as a cold variant of dripstone. Ice crystals similar in shape to amethyst clusters could add to the overall atmosphere of the biome. What's interesting is that mechanically, this wouldn't need to reinvent caves. At its core, an ice cave would function very similarly to a dripstone cave, but with different materials and an overall atmosphere. And honestly, it's kind of wild how much impact a well thought out recolor can have. The same approach could easily apply to deserts as well, with sandstone covered caves that feel eroded rather than lush or frozen. Simple changes like these would give caves more personality and serve as a simple yet effective cave overhaul. The next feature is surprisingly also cave related: glowworms. A community member once suggested glowworms on Twitter, pointing out how fitting they'd be for Minecraft caves, and the developer even agreed with the idea. So imagine glowworms generating around underground water pools, hanging from the cave ceiling, along the edges of the lake, and softly illuminating the area with a vibrant blue color. They wouldn't need to function as full mobs either. Instead, glowworms could work more like a decorative block, similar in spirit to sea pickles or glowberries, making them easy to use for decoration. It's a small detail, but one that would add a lot of atmosphere to caves without introducing unnecessary complexity. They would also perfectly complement glow squids, making for quite the fitting addition. The next feature is worth discussing, and it has to do with the blaze. Back in 2020, during an Ask Mojang video, Jeb was asked whether a special Blaze variant, like a Soulfire Blaze, could be added to the game. He responded by saying that Mojang generally avoids adding direct variants to existing mobs, but also mentioned that a Soulfire themed mob would still be interesting. And while they haven't exactly stayed true to the first statement over the years, I think a Soul Blaze is still very much worth exploring. Soul Blazes would spawn in Soul Sand valleys and be surrounded by soul particles. Unlike regular blazes, they would fire Soulfire projectiles, setting the player ablaze with Soulfire instead of normal fire. Rather than shooting multiple small fireballs, they'd launch a single, larger projectile with a heavier impact. Movement-wise, the Soul Blaze would behave more erratic, flying around much faster than the normal blaze, but only along one axis at a time, giving its movement a more unpredictable feel. I think this would be a cool concept for a Soulfire-based mob if it was to get a bit more polished out. The next feature is the addition of a brand new workstation, the Pyrotechnics table. With the introduction of the loom, banner crafting was moved out of the crafting table and into a much more intuitive and efficient UI. Fireworks could benefit from the exact same treatment. A dedicated table for fireworks would make the entire process much simpler and make experimentation far more accessible. Using the Pyrotechnics table, you'd be able to select primary and secondary colors, add gunpowder, pick special effects, and finally define the explosion shape, all for a clear interface. This removes the need to constantly check the wiki just to remember how to craft a specific firework. Overall, it would make fireworks far more inviting to players who currently avoid them due to how complicated the crafting process can be. The next feature is a bit more different from the rest and ties directly into the deep dark. The Wild update introduced the ancient city along with a huge set of new blocks, and one of the blocks originally planned for the update was the Sculk Jaw. The idea was pretty simple. Stepping on it would change its texture and deal damage to the player. While it was expected to release with the update, it was ultimately scrapped, and while I agreed that the original concept seemed a bit underwhelming, I think a block like this could still earn its place in the game with a few changes. Instead of a simple texture change, the Sculk Jaw would now open up and attack with fangs, functioning more like a bear trap. Visually, it would resemble a Sculk Shrieker, allowing it to blend seamlessly into ancient cities, making it that much more dangerous. Its main purpose would be to hinder players trying to escape the warden. Once triggered, the fangs would clamp onto the player, dealing damage and immobilizing them. To break free, you'd either have to mine the block or repeatedly jump to escape, both of which are a hazard when you're trying to escape a warden. With Silk Touch, the Sculk Jaw could be collected and reused as a trap, allowing players to place it themselves to trap mobs. It could also have a way to disable. Loud sounds like a goat horn could temporarily disable it by forcing the jaw open, so I believe a block like this could have an overall positive impact on the game. The next feature focuses on the barrel. When barrels were first added to Bedrock Edition, there was an unused texture called the fish barrel that never actually made it into the game, which is a real shame. So the idea here is simple. Using 9 of any fish, you could craft a barrel filled with that specific fish. Cod, salmon, tropical fish, or even pufferfish. These barrels could then be broken back down into individual fish, effectively acting as a way to compact food while also serving as a great decorative block for things like markets or storage rooms. This idea could even extend to other food items such as apples, potatoes, or carrots. However, while that would be intuitive and straightforward, I think there's a cleaner way to implement this. Instead of crafting a special barrel for each item, you could fill a regular barrel entirely with a single item. Once full, the barrel's appearance would change to visually represent what's inside. This avoids stepping on the one unique advantage watermelons currently have, being compactable, because if every food item gained that ability, watermelons would become even more useless than they already are. So what do you think? Should this work for crafting dedicated barrels, or by visually changing a barrel once it's filled? Let me know in the comments. The final, and possibly oldest feature mentioned in this video has to do with doors. All the way back in 2010, Notch mentioned that thanks to tile entities, doors could now properly animate as they swing open. While this idea has been recreated countless times in mods, it has never actually made its way into the base game, and it wouldn't have to stop at doors either. Trapdoors, fence gates, and even blocks like the chiseled bookshelf could benefit from proper animations. These changes aren't strictly necessary, but they'd go a long way to improve the overall feel of the game, and these were some of the best features that might one day find themselves in the game. Let me know in the comments which one you like the most, and which one you'd love to see added to the game. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like, subscribing, or sharing it with a friend. It really helps the channel out. And if you haven't already, check out my previous videos where I add a bunch of Minecraft features or give existing ones a brand new purpose. I've also started a new Minecraft server where I will be playing with subscribers. So if you want to join in, you can find the details on my Discord server. Hope to see you in the next video. Bye!